So, you're a business owner dedicated to the significant and sustainable growth of both you and your business. Welcome to the Add a Zero podcast.
Hi, Jay Allen from the Add a Zero podcast, and this week I want to be talking to you about our 12-week transformation program that we've just launched to be able to support the accidental business owner from freeing themselves from being the bottleneck within their own business. If you haven't watched the last 2 or 3 episodes, I strongly recommend that you just click reverse and just go back 2 or 3 episodes to learn about the transformation that we've made within our business over the last month or so in order to be really, really specific with who we help, how we help, and the impact that's going to have. And today I want to talk to you a lot more in detail about what that actually looks like and how we can support you in a short period of time to be able to make that transition from being operator owner through to being owner and free of the day-to-day responsibilities, to be able to transition from always working in it to specifically working on it and to be surplus to requirement for the business to be able to continue to grow and evolve and development, whether you're in it or not. And it's a 3-phase operation. Obviously, it all depends on the willingness and the speed in which you're able to implement the things that we're going to talk about. But it really is a 3-step process, which starts with our basic freedom assessment, a free tool to be able to establish as to exactly how trapped are you within the business, and therefore the amount of consideration or things that we would need to offload from you in order to enable you to become that strategic CEO. And the first phase of that, when we worked together with the client, is to be able to recognize the current reliance upon you and the things that would need to happen in order to be able to release you from those things. It's all right talking, as we've spoken previously, about being able to simply delegate to other people. But we know in practice that that simply doesn't work. We've got to ensure that the right things are given to the right people at the right time with the right motives and the right KPIs to ensure that it doesn't end up back on your desk or them doing it and in the back of your head still scratching saying, but I could do it better, but I could do it quicker, but I could do it differently. And that urge to be able to step back in. So the first phase of it is being able to recognize the current reliance upon you and who and what and where and how that would need to change in order to be able to free you from it. Now, a good example of this is a client I worked with late last year, where they were a successful service delivery company. They got about 12 or 13 staff. The owner was still the primary fee earner in the business, but there were 3 or 4 other people that were also generating a healthy income for the business, and a small back office team that were reliant by those fee earners to be able to get all of the back office admin completed to keep the wheels turning. And what we did in phase 1, that recognition phase, is acknowledge that even though there were some fee earners, that in actual fact, the primary income, the most significant chunk of the income, came still from the business owner. And there was almost an apprehension about being able to pass bigger clients, more significant projects, perhaps more complex work, to more junior members of the team, almost in the fear of letting go. Well, what happens if they were able to do everything that I could do? Why wouldn't they simply go off and do it themselves? Why would they stay here in a business for a salary? And the simple fact is that not everyone is cut out to be a business owner. There's something really reliant and reliable about being an employee, about showing up, about doing a good job, about being able to go home and switch off. And for a number of people out there, it doesn't matter how good or competent they are in doing what they do, their idea of success is to be able to earn a good income and to go home and forget it all, to be an employee. The simple fact is that unless we are willing to let go of the big projects, then the simple fact is that when it comes to scale and exit, or certainly an exit strategy, whether you want it now or for some stage in the future, if the biggest income still relies upon you, then you can almost rule that out with regards to what the business becomes valued at when a buyer comes to be able to take it on. They're not just going to look at revenue and talk about a 3 times multiple of profits or an EBITDA value. They're going to look at your role, your responsibilities, your income generation. And if you're still a predominant part of that business, they're going to pretty much rule that out when it comes to negotiating purchase value. You've got to understand that you've got to make yourself redundant from day-to-day operations. You've got to become surplus to requirement, that anything that you subsequently do is through choice rather than through necessity. Our job then becomes to coach and mentor and support and train the junior members of staff that either individually or at least collectively they can manage the bigger contracts, the more complex work, and our job goes from doing the work to supporting the person to do the work well. And it's only once we allow ourselves to step out of this, but everything relies on me, or but I'm the best at doing this, or what happens if. It's what we call servant leadership, about being willing to step off the pedestal and to start putting other people on it, to enable other people to step forward to become the new face of the business, creating the next generation of growth and wealth within the business, that you are there to support them rather than them hang on to your coattails in the hope that one day you might leave some of it to them. The big transition over the last decade or so of really good, skilled workers has often been down to career progression and career stagnation. If you've put somebody into a place of seniority, of capability, of being able to drive and grow the business, of generating a significant income for the business, and then stagnated their ability to be able to progress further, I can guarantee you the competition's already looking at them. The recruiters are already contacting them, either directly or indirectly, and making offers to try and entice them to go and work somewhere else where they do have that career progression. There was a study done recently through LinkedIn that shows that 72% of existing employees have already been approached by either a competitor or a recruiter on behalf of a competitor to make an offer if they were willing to move. 72% of your workforce are already being targeted to work elsewhere. And it's down to you to ensure that they feel comfortable, safe, that they've got a career path ahead of them and not just a job for now, to enable them the stickiness, the willingness, the loyalty to be able to stick with you and your brand, as opposed to dance around and jump all over the place, potentially going to work for a competitor because you failed to be able to give them the opportunity within. And therefore, our job as a leader is about being able to step aside as quickly as possible and to empower not just one, but a number of people to be able to move forward and to create progression. One of the things that you can do relatively easily is to create not just a current organizational structural chart, but to create a future organizational structural chart. What does the business look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years' time? And sure enough, that's subject to change dependent on the environment, which direction we choose to take the business. If you've been watching or listening for the last few episodes, you'll notice that we celebrated 10 years of business earlier this year, and then subsequently have chosen to I wouldn't necessarily move in a different direction, but to really, really hone in on the direction we want to take for the next 5-10 years, to be able to move the needle back away from where it had begun to stray, back towards magnetic north and the sea of sameness, and to stick to our own true north and to ensure that we're doing what we want to do, with whom we want to do, in the manner in which we want to be able to do so, in order to get the right results for our clients. And therefore, being able to take a true hard look at who you are and the vision and the values of the business, and to be able to say, how do I instill that in the next generation? And what do I put on a wall of inspiration, not only of the existing roles and responsibilities, but of the bigger business, of where it's heading? We don't necessarily have to put names on the wall, but we would certainly want to be able to put job titles and very brief job descriptions of things that the business will require in the future. And as a result of that, when it's shared openly in a staff room or on a staff website or intranet, it gives everyone in the business the ability to be able to see where they currently sit and the opportunities available to them, not just now, but as they become available in the future. It opens up a new series of dialogue conversations with regards to, that position there that's currently shown in my business. We've got a future organisational chart. It's an A3 piece of paper. And in the bottom left-hand corner are a few coloured in squares, the current existing team and the roles that exist as of today. And the rest of it is almost penciled in grey stencil that we can move and amend and change as and when the business evolves. And we can colour those squares in as we fill that role, as we create that role and then fill it with a new member of staff. Either from within, either transitioning from one position to another, or accelerating and moving their career forward, moving into a place of team leader or management or some form of further responsibility and salary that goes with it. But in doing so, by having this future organisational chart, we regularly have conversations in the business with regards to what does that look like? What would I need to do to be considered for that? And I certainly want to be seen as a fair employer by being able to make opportunities available within the business and promoting from within, as opposed to continually looking outside the business and bringing into people certainly of senior responsibility. I want people to evolve and grow through the business, that my true north runs through their veins, that they've seen there and been there and gone through this transition with us. And we can only do that by, one, stepping aside and understanding that our role is to create those opportunities and then fill them with other people other than ourselves, rather than I'm going to cherry pick the best bits for me and then leave everything else to everybody else. In doing so, you're creating stagnation of employment and the risk that you're going to end up with some churn of employees, but also maintaining yourself central to the business becomes the bottleneck that eventually prevents you from being able to move, grow and evolve and develop yourself and mitigate any form of true sellable value. The buyer will see you as a risk because they don't want to necessarily replace and fall back into the job that you've created for yourself. And so as we move forward, as we've got to be able to evolve and grow as a business, our job is to recognise the need for leadership, but that our role is to support that leadership rather than become it. Our job is to coach and to train and to exceed and excel other people in their roles, to help people to step into new opportunities, to test to see if it's something that they want to do, and be willing to be able to support them to fail as much as to win. To support and guide them, but to give them enough opportunity that they can forge a way forward, rather than being so dictatorial that you've got to stick to what it says. We've got to create a business that is people-centric, not just process-centric, because otherwise we worked to rule, and when the environment changes, like we saw during COVID in lockdown, if we've uninspired people, they don't think for themselves, they wait to be told. And no one predicted COVID, certainly no one predicted a national lockdown. And as a result, the businesses that really struggled weren't the ones that weren't selling hand sanitizer and face masks. They're the ones where a team were uninspired to understand the value that they delivered, the requirements of the customer that they served, and how to bring the two together. Our job as a leader is to first make ourselves redundant by ceasing to be involved in day-to-day operations within the business, but by doing so, not just handing out the £10 tasks, but to create the leadership opportunities for other people to step forward. I can't express to you enough the importance of being able to release ourselves from recognizing the stagnation that we've created by being the bottleneck. Now, the next phase of that is to be able to reframe what it is that your job is, for you to transition from being the owner-operator and moving into that strategic role of CEO, of coach, mentor, trainer, guide, to those that are now subsequently to take on more and more and more responsibility. To be able to step out of being the point of contact and to help other people to move and evolve into that new role and responsibility. I remember in one of my old corporate jobs, I went in and recognised the amount, to say this was a national company with almost 1 million employees across the world, the amount of micromanagement that was being instilled upon the business by a very much hierarchical leadership model that determined that you weren't allowed to think for yourself, you had to do as you were told or ask for permission from somebody else. That in actual fact, the whole thing was prevented from being able to grow and evolve and develop because no one was willing to take any form of responsibility. No one was willing to be able to recognise what was good and what was bad. They just did as they were told. It created such stagnation that it was at risk of failure just because it was unable to be able to move and evolve with what was happening. And I spent a year in change management at a regional level trying to be able to support about 4,500 staff to be able to move forward and understand how to be able to think for themselves, to be able to evolve as a team, to create a community of development as opposed to work under rule. I remember my first review when I went back to the national board and they said, "How are you getting on?" And I've said, when I first got in there used to be a big sign that said, "If in doubt, ask Fred," regional director. I said, in 3 months, I've been able to remove the sign. People were so entrenched in unable to think for themselves that even though I'd taken the sign down, the moment there was something that was happening or I asked them a question about what do you think? What do you want to do? How would you do this? Well, I'm not sure. What would Fred do? I got to understand and unpick the thinking to allow people to be able to understand that it's your job. It's your future. It's not just a job, it's a career. And in doing so, greater minds come together when we all think as one and be able to put things and plans forward. Certainly for the last 7 years in my TrueNORTH, we've run mastermind groups. And again, just a quick reminder, because whether you're aware of it or not, the majority of people who currently advertise a quote unquote mastermind, it's not a true and traditional mastermind group. It's almost like a master class where people turn up and then ask the host what would they do if. And chances are the host is somebody that's already been there and done that or grown a successful business and now instilling upon them their perception and their ideas. Or a hybrid where they instill what they would do and then invite other people to contribute to it, already knowing what the leader has said. And that's not mastermind at all. If we go back to its origins, mastermind is first documented in 1922 by Napoleon Hill, when he recognised that a group of significant owners or owners of significant sized businesses, rather than being in competition with each other, behind the curtains, behind the scenes, behind the public eye, regularly came together, shared thoughts and ideas and challenges and best business practice. Behind the competition of the high street, they regularly came together and talked about the problems that they faced, that collectively they could overcome them, even though on the high street they were subsequently in competition with each other. Behind the scenes, they recognised that by sharing a problem, not only was there a group and a collective ideas and thoughts and perspectives of how to address it, but that collectively, the level of conversation of me asking a question, you responding to it, it prompting an idea from me and somebody else, and prompting somebody else to contribute of their experience and their knowledge and their background and their qualifications, that the level of conversation rose so significantly that, as Napoleon Hill wrote in his memoirs in 1922, it created a mastermind, a collective of thinking greater than the individual would ever have achieved. There's a lovely quote from Einstein of the same year that says, nobody would ever overcome a problem using the same level of thinking that which created it. Nobody will overcome a problem using the same level of thinking as that which created it. So if we take that into your business and your context, while ever you are the single point of contact that everyone comes to for thoughts and ideas and suggestions, how to overcome challenges, what to do if there's a problem, if you are the single point of reference, then when you leave, they've no one to refer to. What would Jay do? It's not what would Jay do. It's what would my true north do? How do we overcome this? What do we need to do collectively? How do we come together to think differently, to be better than we've ever been before? And if we can instill that in a business, then not only does it create camaraderie and a community of people working together, but it raises up the bar of capability within the business. And that's phase 2. And then phase 3, once we've done that and we've put that in place, it's now the ability to be able to start to retract and to cease to be the point of contact. Only once we've put that in place and we've seen it working, can we start to release you from the role that you're currently in, to start giving away those roles and responsibilities in the knowledge that it won't have a significant impact or damage to the business that you've already created. The release mechanism is about you stepping away from being the point of contact to becoming the facilitator of people who are capable of doing it for themselves. We've created this 3-phase process. It's called the business freedom technique for that exact reason, because it frees trapped owners from being the bottleneck without putting the business at risk. If you'd love to know more, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Simply get in touch by clicking on the link in the show notes below, and we can talk about how much of a bottleneck are you currently in the business and what needs to happen to be able to free you from that, to be able to accelerate, to scale sustainably, and to free you from being the business to becoming the founder of that business success. For me, it's all about being able to live the legacy and not simply work and work and work in the hope that you can subsequently leave a legacy when you finally retire. If that sounds of interest, it's time we had a conversation. God bless, take care. I'll see you next week.
That's all for this episode. As always, we really thank you for listening and welcome your comments, thoughts, and suggestions. So please do drop us a line by emailing podcast@mytruenorth.biz. And don't forget, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening to this through. And tell your colleagues and business network all about who we are. You've been listening to the Add a Zero podcast presented by Jay Allen. Brought to you in association with TrueNORTH, the UK's leading ethical coaching company.